Okay, and we are live. So let's start from the beginning. Can you please tell us who are you and what inspired your journey?
Sure. My name is Jimmy Rios. I'm the owner of Rios Business Advisors and Rios Business Funding. Actually, started my career in 1997 and with a company called Commercial Credit. And ultimately, I saw that there was a lot of things that needed to be changed
Mhm.
in the finance arena in that world um, that I couldn't control. And so the only way that I could try to make changes to a system was to basically build my own system. And so in 2002, I ventured on my own to build what I eventually became what I have now, and it was all based on looking at making changes to systems to help people attain capital, be able to get the needs of all the things they want, whether it be in business or personal, buying a house, obviously
Mhm.
all the different things that people look for. But ultimately, I wanted to be a contributor in society to help in other ways that weren't being done. And a lot of people weren't getting the help with their credit. They weren't being given the guidance and the mentorship to be able to elevate themselves in a better position with their
Mhm.
lives. And so they were going in circles with their jobs, going through what I call the golden handcuffs, where they never
Yeah.
felt, they could reach their goals. And of course, everything I do, even through all those years, I was like a walking, talking billboard to everything that you shouldn't do to try to do everything that you should do, right? So I learned a lot in my own journey of by getting others to help me because of the mistakes that I made. And I think I couldn't talk like this 20 years ago. I could only talk in that and whatever I was doing at that moment. But as I look and I'm 49 years old, as I look at 25
Mhm.
years of my life, I can see where those changes evolved to now be a better mentor and advisor for others because I've been through so much and made so many mistakes that I'm empathetic to other people's needs even more. So that makes it very apropos now to be able to talk like this because I think you have to go through the fire, to get to the other side and be molded, and that's
Mhm.
kind of how it was for me.
Yeah. And what are the main fields in which you help people?
So I think now our biggest contributing factor is we built a program called the eye level to high level program, and it's in the area of finances and investments, right? And when I say finances, traditionally speaking, people need money. They go into debt
Mhm.
to either for business or personal for any need. You're gonna have to go into some type of debt. Well, we all know that getting money is not really the problem, right? People can get money all the time. The problem is how do you go about paying it off without, having to have 100 jobs and you know uh, giving up the freedom of time. So we've developed a program where we utilize debt for what it is and put it together inside of our investment platform to be able to help liberate the debt and pay off the debt in a very short period of time to be able to liberate the person with the time that they need and start having, through our guidance, we start helping them set up their blueprint for success for the future. So that way, it's not just the act of getting rid of debt. It's now, let's talk about what are some of your goals, right? Did you want to build your business?
Mhm.
What things do you need inside of your business to be successful? Now we lowered the barrier of entry for those things that you want to do, and we're able to better do it because you're being guided. So we can show you how to use your money properly, how to pay taxes properly, how to minimize taxes, right? It's more holistic
Mm-hmm.
overview of an ecosystem of financial services that's not just product driven, where you just sell a product or a service one time, right? With us, it's more about laying the blueprint, the foundation of all the things you want to do and how are we going to go about doing it, right? And that's where
Mm-hmm.
the competitive advantage and the differentiator is between us and anybody else. I think anybody else has insurance, mortgages, real estate, business loans. Anyone else can do credit or in some fashion as a product or a service. That's one thing,
Mm-hmm.
but holistically, as a big blueprint for your success, to be able to be a contributing factor in the development of that, that's huge because it would be very expensive, very difficult to try to find all the people that can do that for you. And we put it in a way that's very contingent based, so you don't have to pay any money up front. We work through all the programs and problems that you may have so that we can get you there. We get paid upon success. So we're vested, and our motto is we're your partner in progress. So we're vested in your success because we rely on that to get paid,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it behooves us to get you through the levels, right? And get you to the other side with success by following our plan. If we just gave you money and we didn't give you a plan, how many people get the money and just run and don't do anything with it? Or, in other words, spend it or whatever. And then they come back 6 months later and say, hey, Jimmy, I need more money, right? Because,
Mm-hmm.
well, we blew it, or a pandemic happened, or tariffs happened. There's always an excuse, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then I'll go back and I say, well, didn't you say you needed to purchase a truck for your business, or didn't you say you needed to hire a couple of CPA, whatever that is, but it never got done, right? And so by having somebody that has another vision of how to help you, we can stay accountable and on track to be able to hit those goals. But now you have also somebody that has 25 years of experience doing a lot of the things that you might be making a mistake on to avoid making the mistakes. And I'm not saying making mistakes is a bad thing. I learned a lot from my mistakes. What I'm saying is that there's better ways to do something that doesn't have to cause a mistake, because you can still achieve your goal if you talk to somebody who's already been doing it. What did you do? Right? What was your experience, strength, and hope in being able to help me? Right? And that's how I got better with my business, was reaching
Mm-hmm.
out to others that knew more and getting help from them.
Mm-hmm. So I can see that you are helping people make this debt into a good debt that is a sort of an investment, and by doing that, you are not only providing value to the customers, but you are also lowering your own risk.
Well, 100%. So one thing I always tell people is there's three types of debt. You got productive debt, you have unproductive debt, and you have destructive debt, right? And in the world that we think of, most people, they get in when they get into debt, they don't know how to use debt in a productive way. They
Mm-hmm.
know how to use it in a destructive way. They can go on to Vegas and go gamble. They can do it unproductively, where they can go buy a depreciating asset and that loses value, and they're buying things, right? But they don't know how to put money to work. And
Mm-hmm.
money that's just sitting there is what I call unemployed, right? If you can make money work in your favor, you can now have your two hands to do the things that you want to do without forsaking the profits that come from your two hands work. So that your third arm that we build as a system is coming in as a sweeper and sweeping up all these things that you're trying to do, so that you're always elevated in a form of being able to do things for the benefit of what I call revenue producing activities, right? If you're constantly in action making money, right, you're able to use the levers of debt to be able to help you make more money, right? Now you're thinking different. Now you're elevating yourself to what we call the high level. This is why my program is called eye level to high level, because we take innovative approaches that are done at the high level, but we bring it to an eye level mentality to start changing your thought process. If I didn't do it in the way that I did it, you wouldn't understand what getting a good return on your investment is. Most people, when they think of, well, if I ask you, what's a good return on my money if for a year, right? And like,
Mm-hmm.
where do I go put my money in a good investment, right? Like people automatically don't think of being able to make more than a certain dollar amount or percentage, right? They're very
Mm-hmm.
limited in scope in that thinking because they don't know any other tools or abilities to make money grow at a faster clip. So if I told somebody, hey, you wanted to buy that $300,000 house, and I'm able to help you put a plan together to pay it off in the next year, right? If they tell
Mm-hmm.
you that you have 30 years to pay this mortgage, you can't fathom what it is to pay a mortgage off in 1 year. 300,000? What? I only make X amount. Well, yeah, you only make X amount, but that doesn't mean your money can't make money for you, compounding so that we can pay this off in a year. And that's the change in perspectives that we give because we don't expect everybody to understand it all at once. And we say, well, how do you eat an elephant? You have to just take small little
Mm-hmm.
bites at a time. So we don't throw all this at you at once. We start by analyzing your situation and really understanding what is the root cause of your problems. Because if you have a need, it's because there's a problem somewhere, right? And we have to find a solution. Well, the solution's not always cut in the same way that you think it is, right? The real basic is that a lot of people think, well, I got this problem, I need $50,000, and when I start doing the analysis, I start seeing, well, no, you don't need $50,000. $50,000 is only going to do this. You probably need $100,000, and this is why, right? And I start showing them all the different weaknesses or holes I see, right? And how we're going to go about plugging those holes. But at the same time, cash flow is energy or currency, right? If we don't have cash flow flowing, you're gonna lose somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we don't stop the bleeding of your cash flow somewhere. So we start finding through different strategies on how to stop the bleeding, so to speak, and how to make money work for you so that we can start building and doing the things you need. And that's the main thing is being able to find being able to find those solutions and helping people understand it um, in a very basic way. We don't want to complicate things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand. It's some people can be scared of getting in debt, but I think it's because they don't understand this difference, as you told, between the good and the bad debt. But do you think that nowadays, um, credit and personal and for businesses, is it more important than ever? Is it a good time to go in debt?
So listen to this, and I'm first generation Colombian American, right? So my parents
Mm-hmm.
immigrated from Medellin, Colombia in 1968, right? And we've adopted, the American philosophies of credit and, everything's on credit, right? In Colombia and many countries, they're not built that way, right? A lot of traditional, foreign countries, everything's cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do go buy a house, you got to come in with a bigger down payment, and nobody believes in having a lot of debt, right? So in a way, it's like when I went to Colombia to start my business there to do the things we're doing here, because I have a very big following in Colombia. I have
Mm-hmm.
26,000 members that
Oh,
follow me,
wow.
expatriates that moved to Colombia, and they're trying to start businesses and buy properties, and they're all asking the same thing, like, how do we get financing? Because they're used to American financing, right? And in Colombia, it's not like that. So yes, to answer your question, credit, because of everything that's happening in the world, has become has elevated itself to an even bigger need. And properly done, it can be the best friend that you can have because it allows you to do so many things that you wouldn't be able to in the traditional format, right? And so, but by being able to educate in the credit arena, through our mentorship and our programs, we're able to take people and limit their liabilities from what they're used to doing. So most people will get into credit card debt or any type of debt using their credit, which affects them personally. But if I'm able to show you how to build business credit, how to even, well, they say, well, Jimmy, I already have a job. I don't want to start a business. And I tell them, look, having a consulting business, right, as an LLC doesn't mean you have to have a brick and mortar, retail store. You don't have to have, shelves full of product. You don't have to have all these things that you think of in a traditional business. Yet you have the structure of a business and you're able to work with affiliates like myself who can pay you for bringing clients that need our services. Now you have a consulting business, right? And now you have different ways to structure yourself, right, with the different parameters that we teach to be able to get business credit. So you use your personal credit score as just a bridge to get you over to the business side. Now you have more leverage because now you have a business on paper and you can use it to be able to purchase real estate. Maybe you want to buy a franchise. Eventually, you might want to get out of your quadrant of being an employee and become
Mhm.
self-employed. And then maybe you become self-employed, but you built a system, right? So now you're in that third quadrant that Robert Kiyosaki talks about in
Mhm.
his cash flow quadrant. And now you have a system where you have money making money as an investor, right? So what
Mhm.
if you wanted to keep your day job as a teacher, but you wanted to do other things, on the days or time that you're off? Well, your money that you built with your system is helping you do your goals and freedom that you might not get from a W 2 job. So I don't tell people what to do. I give them different options. If you're a police officer, if you're a teacher, or whatever your job entails. But if you're looking to better your life, because many people will chase their tail in their 9 to 5
Mhm.
and they never seem to get ahead. And the ones that go and become self employed, they chase their tail even more because now they have more responsibilities and they might make more money, but they never have time to enjoy their money
Mhm.
because they don't have a system. So if we can help them build a system that is going to be able to give them money to do the things they want, what is the ultimate price that you would pay for freedom of time? If there's only 24 hours in a day, how much would you pay to have extra time? People don't understand that concept. And I say, well, there's no better feeling than being able to take your family
Mhm.
on a trip and give them those memories that are priceless because you put something in place that was very unselfish to help them for a generation. So we call that legacy, making
Mhm.
legacies, right? So you're helping your future generations down the line with what you started. And that is probably the biggest gift I can give people is the ability to find other ways to supplement and give the rest of the generations coming the things that you didn't have. Every generation wants more or better for their kids, their kids, but they don't have a system to do that. And I mean, I've done a lot. I'm always studying. I'm always educating myself. I don't stop. And I've learned from reading on, like the Rockefellers and some of these big dynasties that made, America what it is. How did they become a dynasty in their own right? What systems did they use 20 or 200 or 100 years ago to be able to do this? They didn't have technology. They didn't have all the things we have now. How come they were able to do it and we can't with all the tools we have? It's just because they built a system and they followed the path. And I feel that we have systems now that can allow that. You just got to change your mindset and your perspective to be
Mhm.
open minded to looking at things.
Yes, I agree. And you are not only giving people credit, giving people money, but you're also giving them financial education. And as you said, this is a thing that will continue into the next generations, as it's not really a knowledge that you can get from a standard school system.
Well, and that segues into when we look at the problems today. I mean, if we had more educators that could apply real world you know problems with real world solutions, even if it was planting the foundation or the seeds of being able to tell these kids, look, this is how, if you get paid $1,000 a week, this is what's going to go to taxes, this is what's going to go to a house, and you start building these debt structure parameters, so we could start building models of vision of saying, well, in this model, this client, made $100,000 a year, but he really only took home this amount of money per month, and this is why. And then we showed another model that showed how using investments and other modes to help them supplement their income, to help them pay off this debt, could put them in a better place. Well, kids are going to start seeing those visuals, and they're going to think differently when they start getting their money, and it doesn't have to be so drawn out and difficult. If you teach in a way that attunes to the student, what they're seeing, right? I can't My kids are different
Mhm,
than we were, right? I have twin 16-year-old boys and a 19-year-old, and they think and see things through a different perspective than I did when I was their age, right? I didn't have all the things.
mhm,
They don't even watch TV anymore. They watch their TV on their phones, or through YouTube, or
mhm,
these they're not used to watching TV. They don't have to do that. They go on their little systems, and they're getting information 24/7 through their systems, right? So they
mhm,
think differently and look at things differently. I think there's ways that we could educate the generations by utilizing these real world examples in very simplistic fashions, right? And a
mhm,
lot of the people, I'm writing another book. I have a book now on Amazon called Decoding the Mystery of Business Credit. So that was my first book. That is very important because I wrote it in a way that was very easy to understand. But my second book is the eye level to high level story, right? How we're taking real world problems, and finding um, achievable real world solutions, right? And I'm making it in a format where we're going to talk to clients that have been through the program or in the program, that are talking about how it applied in their life, right? Real world, right? Situations where they can talk not only on the effects of how it can work for them positively, but what were some of the negative things they went through mentally, right? Anxiety,
mhm,
fear, right? All these other variables that you don't account for, but that are real, right? They're real problems in making decisions, right? And trusting. And there's a lot of things out there that shine, that sound good, but they're not, right? How do you make a program like this separate itself from all those that, are, this is a non-traditional program. Goes against the grain of what they teach you in school, right? But
mhm,
you have to think outside the box. If you think inside the box, it's going to take you 30 years to pay off your mortgage, right? What if I can do it in a fraction of the time based on what I'm talking about? And I can prove it, right? Not just talk about it, right? That's where I think we're going to make some very big strides over time. That's why we're having these conversations on these mediums, because a lot of people that are out there listening, they don't know that it's possible. They don't know that it's possible doing it in other countries, right? Money is universal, and we can make it work in any country. We modeled it inside the U.S., but we're now doing it in Mexico and in Colombia. We're looking at raising the bar year over year, to the point where we're even doing our own capital raise ourselves, right, as a company, so
mhm,
that we can have our own money to be able to work with people, not institutional money, right? Where we can now not depend on third parties to lend our clients the money, but now we can be the ones that either do, scholarships and nonprofit work, and we could take on more partners and more projects and help the community on a large scale.
I also wanted to ask you how the credit increases the potential profits and also how it helps lower the taxes.
Yeah. So whenever I take like $100,000, let's say, of
Let's maybe use an example of real estate. I think that will be easy for people to understand.
real estate, real estate is a great example. In fact, that's probably our niche, is because I built my business around real estate. And in real estate, traditionally you go and you get a house, and you might get some tax deductions on the property, but you're getting it because you need a place and it's going to appreciate over time. And it's something that is tangible, right? Um, I can take equity that's built into the house, right? And with
Mm-hmm.
credit, I can put that money to work, so that, let's say I put $25,000 of my home equity. Home equity money is just sitting there looking very pretty, but it doesn't do anything for you. If you just have it sitting in your house, it doesn't do anything for you. But if I take 25,000 and I put it in my system, and I'm able to produce 10 times that, that's 250,000, right? Well, I have
Mm-hmm.
more than enough to pay off the equity loan, but now I have enough to pay down or pay off that property, right? But what if you're like many people that took out loans on your mortgage and you have a very good interest rate? Don't pay that off, right? Use that 250,000 and get yourself some more properties that are cash flowing, that you can now deduct and get more. You can now get depreciation, right? And get more tax write-offs utilizing the capital gains. And you can use the 1031 exchange model, so that your capital gains that you would have paid on $225,000 of profits, now you're using that money in being able to purchase things that are going to keep appreciating, and you keep rolling that over, right? We can go into commercial, we can go into life insurance, we can go into all kinds of different tax strategies to offset the capital gains that comes from making money in an investment. If you just make money in an investment, even if they take 30%, right, that's a lot of money to just let an institution take in the form of taxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be very smart in being able to utilize all these tools to be able to position yourself, right? In the same process, you need to set up your estate plan. You have to have a will. You have to have a structured, maybe a holdings company, and start borrowing from yourself, right? So we do different strategies where we actually can set up like businesses under you, right? Where now those businesses get funded business lines of credit, and now you can borrow from your, let's call it B company, and your B company becomes your lending entity, right? So now you basically constructed your own bank, and you can borrow from yourself instead of taking money from your capital gains, which you might have to do the first time, right? But after you build the structure, you can borrow from yourself. So if I have a $1 million line of credit, now I can borrow 250,000 instead of taking out of my capital gains money, and I can put that money to work, right? And I can deduct the interest and any fees that I choose to charge myself from my lending company, right? So do you see where I'm
Mm-hmm.
going with the structure? Is that you always, yeah, you might have to pay a pretty penny going in, starting out, right? But then if you structure yourself, you're setting yourself up for future success, because once you do it one time, you're going to do it again and
Mm-hmm.
again and again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to get more exotic, because now we're going to look at different projects. We're going to look at different tax strategies, right? There's so many tax strategies out there to be able to work. We have a tax advisor, which is different from a CPA, right? People don't know the difference, right? They think a CPA knows it all.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go get brain surgery and you go to your primary care physician, you don't have your primary care physician do the brain surgery, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's two totally they're both doctors in the scope of being having a name. They're a doctor, but they each have their function. And a CPA has their function, and a tax strategist or a tax advisor has their strategy. And there's two different worlds. Um, and that's very important to distinguish. The ones that are at the high level understand it because they have people for each role for everything that they're doing, right? So you have to have a good team to be able to help you make the chess moves that you need to be able to not make as many mistakes that one would do by themselves. You spread your risk and minimize your risk by thinking in that fashion. And to the point of risk taking, everything that we do is very calculated, right? So even when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to putting money in our investment to make that money work, we insure that capital, insure the capital so we can collateralize it. And it's the institutions that lend us money look at it as an asset because if anything were to happen, that money's protected, that money's insured, right? So that gives the person putting money into our program the assurance that their money's safe, right? In the sense that that's why people put money in the bank, right? Because they want to
Mm-hmm.
know that that money's going to be there. I can't I can't look into a crystal ball and tell you what percentage you're going to make, right? Over the course
Mm-hmm.
of compounding, right? But I could tell you that this money over here is safe, right? And that's a big assurance that you won't get trying to play, Robin Hood cryptocurrency, right? We work with all the different platforms in the world to be able to make money, but we knew going in that we had to set up a program that would give our clients assurances because nobody wants to just throw money. That's a very high level of hedging, right? Of betting, and
Mm-hmm.
we want the number one rule that Warren Buffett says, the greatest investor of all time says, protect or don't lose money.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Do you know the second rule? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, don't forget rule number one, right?
Yes. So yeah, it is really important also because of the base effect, right? If you lose 50% of the money, then to go back, you need to make 100%, so twice the amount, yeah.
Long. They don't.
Mhm.
The wealth managers at these these places where you put your money at, they don't like to talk about that part. They talk about the average, and they'll give you a percentage that's obviously prettier than 0%. But they don't like to talk about the negatives. They don't like to talk about the time it takes to get back to ground
Mhm.
zero, right? And then the time it gets to get back to where you were, right? Because everybody loves to talk about, well, I was at 50% gain or whatever. Well, what did you do continuously so that when the dip came, your money still was making money maybe over here, right?
Mhm.
Because if you put all your eggs in one basket, right, and that's all you went off of, then that's a very bad, way to work with your money. If you're it's called being codependent, right? And codependency, if you're
Mhm.
in a relationship that's codependent, that's bad because if that relationship goes down, you go down with it, right? So we
Mhm.
teach how to have insulation and how to have contingencies in place so you don't put yourself in a position of loss. Not saying you won't lose, you can, but you can gain it over here and offset your losses, right? And be able to be
Mhm.
structured in a better way. So I'm never worried, which psychologically helps me because if every day I was chasing the loss or, trying to catch up to these, you know, this what happened yesterday, that's a very hard life to live. If I can live my day knowing that I've made some very confident and good moves, even through some of the losses, I'm okay, right? Because I trust my system that I'm doing the right thing. And a lot of people, unfortunately, they give all their money to a wealth manager and hope that they do what they're supposed to do. They don't educate themselves enough to make the decisions to move their money and put it in other areas. Not saying take it all out, but you need to start looking at different areas of investing that are going to give you that insulation.
That's very important. And also, you talked about the loss, the potential loss, especially on the stock market or on cryptocurrencies that are super volatile. But do you see that the price drops as a potential opportunity?
Yeah, no, I always feel that in markets, regardless of how safe you think an investment is, like real estate, right?
Mhm.
Real estate has been proven to be a very good investment, but when we had our dips, right, those were prime opportunities, right? Whenever there was a dip in the economy, the majority of the people suffered because they didn't have systems in place, right? The ones that were codependent on, what the equity was in their house, and then they lost everything, those people lost. But the ones that think about the losses at that time as an opportunity to buy an asset at three
Mhm.
quarters of the price, that's an opportunity to gobble up a lot of homes and do a lot of things with. And that's why I'm always scouring the market in the way we do with AI. We set up systems to be able to be very to train it to be able to understand the nuances that maybe my mind, for lack of knowledge, or vision, doesn't see. So when, for example, Donald Trump, imposes tariffs, and the whole world starts like literally like freaking out. Well, what happened to gold? It went up. And what happened to oil? It went up. So like different things happen where I see opportunities because I'm like, well, if this happens, then this happens, right? I don't have to worry over here that the stock market lost money because I've put my hedge on other areas that are producing based
Mhm.
on the world tensions and the world movements and all these other things that for me is inconsequential. I don't worry about that because I'm an opportunist. I'm looking for opportunities in different areas, right? And that's why I do the things I do in terms of education, in terms of utilizing tools, right? AI has become one of the most revolutionizing tools that is going to change the world even probably more than the internet did 20 years ago, right?
Mhm.
Or 30 years ago, right? I think it's an evolution of things to come, right? I think people have adopted the internet as the go-to, but the internet of things and AI are taking it to a whole nother level. So if we're as a business and as individuals not adopting those philosophies and those technologies, we're going to get left behind. And to stay ahead, or at least to stay on par with everything that's happening so quick, you need to work with others that are knowledgeable and that are in the trenches, working through the nuances of those systems to make it better for your life. That's how I do it. I made that system become a part of my life so that I'm more efficient because I value time more than anything. Right? We only have so many years on this earth, and we need to learn how valuable time is. So everything I do is leverage of time and how I'm going to be able to get more time in my day to do the things I want to do.
Yes, but nowadays a lot of people in our economy, they are focused on status. Also, the value system can be based on what we own. Yeah.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's sad. Unfortunately, everything that glitters on Facebook or Twitter or these social media channels is not gold, right? I mean, it's not
Mm-hmm.
that, and that's where we start changing also that part of it because when we only focus on these things that literally lose value that are not really in the essence of things, when you die, you don't take anything with you. So it doesn't really matter how beautiful of a mansion you have if it's just you and there's nobody enjoying it, right? You have a fleet
Mm-hmm.
of 40 cars and nobody sees it because you just have them all locked inside of a garage or whatever. I mean, the reality is to each his own, but for generations, we need to start talking about the value that can be had by helping somebody, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
take that value, there's so much more that comes to you and so many benefits that money can't buy, right? Money is a great tool, but there's so many things that utilizing properly that money can buy you to be able to do projects and things to help the community and help others that you don't get from money from going and buying something. That act of just buying something that can be addictive. That can be negative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's what I call destructive, right? And destructive debt. I talk about that. Don't get swayed by the fear of missing out, right? The FOMO by needing to keep up with the Joneses and have all these things. Start thinking, you know, slow. Go slow to go fast. Start thinking delayed gratification because all these things that I talk about is gonna get you where you want to go and what you want to get, and it's gonna position you in a better way. But people don't like to hear that. They want immediate solutions to a problem, and sometimes I tell people, look, it took you 20 years to mess up your life. You're coming to me and you want me to change it in 60 days. That's not realistic. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you right now that unicorns are pretty and they can look really nice, but go find me a unicorn, a true unicorn. And when you do, then I'm definitely coming by your side. It's just not going to happen. So you need to be realistic too to expectations and understand that we're not here to ruin your day by giving you some realism. We want to put a plan in place and we want to help you get to whatever that is. To make it a reality, we always talk about dreams, right? Well, dreams can
Mm-hmm.
become real if you put it down on paper and you reach for a plan to get to that goal, right? Otherwise, it is a dream, and dreams by itself are very hard to get. But if you put them down on paper and we start planning for it, we're going
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really important, especially the power of compounding and that it is built from multiple blocks, not only the capital at the start, but also rate of return that credit can help with, but also time, right? Nothing, there is no free lunch.
And let me tell you, these kids of mine, I started them at a very early age in the compound mentality, right? And I told them, I said, compounding as a science, if you think of what it can do to a dollar, it can do a lot, right? In compounding and making it grow and multiply. But think about what it can do in your life, right? For your health,
Mm-hmm.
for your education, for your goals, for everything. If you compound daily, in your relationships and your spirituality, you're compounding on daily activities that are going to make you better, even 1% better. And they started really accepting and understanding that in their sports. How I talked about, are you compounding today? And that meant, are you giving it your all? Are you maximizing the time? If you're going to go work out, then work out to the fullest. If you're going to, take on nutrition, then eat the best that you can and follow a plan, right? Anything that you do, take it to an nth degree and compound on that because done over time, you're going to see amazing results, right? And the money is a big part of that. But I think that's how we have to start thinking, right? And the sooner we can start thinking in a compound mindset, that's what's going to get us to hit all our goals sooner.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and especially that everything is intertwined. So your health, your psyche, your family, your money, it's all connected.
Mind, body, and spirit. That triad
Mm-hmm.
of really trying to keep that balance is so crucial and it's so necessary. That's why, I'm up early, man. I'm up at 4 or 5 in the morning. I try to get my workouts in. I do my meditation. I'm constantly on the road listening to others, right, in different areas. I have books that I read behind this board. I have a vision board right behind me, and
Mm,
that behind that vision board is a little library, and every room in this house has books, so that when you're sitting there in that room and something comes across your eye, you could pick it up and educate yourself, even if it's 5 minutes. I have so many books that I've started that I haven't finished, but I
mhm,
started and I got my little thing there. It shows where I ended. And Audible, so I'm always on the road listening to others. It's just good to educate your mind and know that mind, we only use a very small percentage of the capacity of our mind. Imagine if we can increase that and compound on that. How much more can
mhm,
it do? This whole thing that I'm talking about, the whole vision, I love at a high level. It didn't happen overnight. It happened over 23 years of compounding effects and losing and gaining and learning, that came over time, but here we are, and and the bar just gets raised because now we're talking about furthering the cause. If we can do it in one geographical area, why can't we do it in
mhm.
10, 20, 30? Why? Who's putting, no, we
Exactly.
don't live in a box. We tear down the box. Let's tear down the box and let's go out. Help more people.
And scale is also very important. If you look at what the billionaires talk about, they always dream big. They talk about scale. And yeah, there are certain businesses, for instance, this video even, it can scale into millions and millions of views without any extra effort. So yeah, it's very important to dream big and look into the scale.
More now. Even more now with scaling, with all these tools that are out there. I mean, the ability to get the message out and start thinking wider, right? And start looking at how, I was talking yesterday to a friend, his name's Daryl, and he said, Jimmy, think about it. If you market, he goes, give me a number, just how many roughly how many people know you on your social media channels. And I said, well, aside from the group that we have 26,000. Personally, I probably would say maybe around 5,000 or 6,000. He goes, okay, good. Now take 10% of that, and then even 1% of that. Imagine if you were able to use your influence with these people and you started working with those networks, right? And then
Mhm,
take a fraction of that. How big could your influence be if you didn't just think so lineal inside of just you, right? If you started
mhm,
thinking about the 10% rule and start thinking of the networks of 10% of the people that follow you, that's huge, right? That becomes gargantuan, right? So that's definitely how I'm thinking, is that everything has its place and we got to leverage. That's all leverage, right? And leveraging other people's time, other people's money, other people's knowledge, that's not a bad thing. I work with leverage all the time when I work in teams, right? And we come together
mhm.
to come up with solutions. I think that's leverage. So we got to start thinking more like that. Quit thinking so selfishly inward and start thinking more unselfish outward.
Yeah, I think it's very important, especially that nowadays we have a crisis of leaders. I'm not going into politics, but as we know, the politicians, they are not the best leaders, historically speaking. And it's important to be a leader in our community, in our line of work, because even a small drop in the ocean creates a lot of ripples.
The problem is that when you talk about leadership, it gets very linear, right? It always goes
Mhm,
to the top. What if we started talking and acting as leaders across a
mhm,
platform, right? Where we start elevating everybody to that level where that one was at the
mhm.
top. What if we start giving? Let's strip titles away and let's start talking about influence, right? And if I
Exactly.
can influence
Influence.
this person, influence, right? If I can influence this person to make better choices and decisions, to elevate himself at my level, now we're talking in the same level, right? Now, but what if that person did it with four other people, right? On one of my,
Mhm.
in fact, I have a podcast this afternoon, and Cesar Lupercio was one of my first clients in this program. And Cesar, he didn't know much about finances and all these things that we talk about, but he took a model that I planted, and over the course of the last 10 months, we've worked together. So he's learning, right? We built
Mhm.
his business. We're we put him in a position where he could finally quit his job in June, right? And he's influenced four other people or five to come to this level, right? And they're learning, right? But he was way far ahead after 10 months than these people
Mhm.
were starting out, right? Well, when he started out, he was the same as these other four, right? So that's what I'm saying is that I stripped the title of Jimmy Rios, author, president, founder, all that crap. I just stripped it down to Jimmy Rios' friend, right? And as a friend, I'm
Mhm.
going to help you, right, with some tools that are helping that could help you, that are helping me, because I'm the one that I'm the walking talking billboard to my program, right? If it helped me, then
Mhm.
through my experience, strength, and hope, I'm going to show you how to do it, right? And that model is duplicatable, right? So everybody in his line are starting to get elevated because we don't treat them like a peon or somebody at the bottom. We treat them with the same level of eye level respect, right? And people, our kids included, think about it. When our parents used to talk to us, they'd yell at us and they'd treat us like we were subordinates. But when I elevated my kids to a level of understanding where they felt valued, because, hey, I
Mhm.
didn't agree with what you did. Tell me why and what we should do to make it better. Now they're coming to my level to talk because I'm observing something that was done wrong and I'm wanting to understand from their point of view how we can make it better, right? Through dialogue, right?
Mhm.
If more people treated each other like that with respect, more solutions would come. There would be less problems in the world. But people don't talk like that. Everybody talks from an area of selfishness because I need control. I got to talk over you. I got to be the man or the woman, whatever that is, and that's not how it is. And
Yeah.
and and I apply that with
Yeah, but that's not a real position of power. That sounds more like a weak ego. That somebody needs to boost their self-confidence somehow.
totally correct. Ego being the optimum word there, right? And how many people have we noticed and seen that because of that ego, they get to that position and
Mhm.
they blur the line, right? They blur it really quick. Where, well, hey, if you don't like it, then you can get out, and it's my way or the highway. Instead of being able to, work together in a solution, it becomes a very one-sided equation, and that's unfair. But that's just the world we live in, and that's why. But the change, we make the change. We make the change. We can't change others, so we got to make the change, right, ourselves
Mhm.
in how we do things. And if you can build a community around that thinks in that fashion in that way, then there's power in community, right? I mean, people
Mhm.
start thinking differently, start acting differently, and it becomes a domino effect. And that's how you effectively make change over time, right? It doesn't happen all in a silo. It happens over time.
Yeah, I agree. It's very important to make this wave of change in a community. All right, Jimmy, thank you very much. At the end, please tell the listeners where can they find you.
Yeah, definitely. I think we were talking about it. Everybody's on social media, so definitely go to YouTube. Take a look at Rios Business Funding. Subscribe to our channel. Make comments on there. Our team is very good about talking to everyone, even on the negative. You're gonna get negative people. Hey, that's okay. We look at all points of view and we try to
Mhm.
invoke what we can to help. And that in riosbusinessfunding.com, go to our website. There's a lot of great tools. My book is on there, Decoding the Mystery of Business Credit, for free. So you can even get it on Amazon, Decoding the Mystery of Business Credit. But definitely educate yourself, reach out if you need a mentor, an advisor, somebody to help you look at things or problems in a different way. That's what we're here.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing knowledge. And yeah, have a great day.